After being traumatized by the villagers about his inability to please women, a youngster comes across a solution that makes him extremely popular. But can he handle the consequences? The movie begins in a village in Korea with a drunk woman mourning about having been a lonely widow for 30 years. When she throws her bottle at the totem pole she was praying to, its nose breaks off. The moment she touches this nose, several men approach her. The nose is later taken to the village chief, and the story repeats every time anyone touches the nose. An elderly monk of the village then carefully places it inside a bottle of wine and buries it below the totem pole to stop these incidences. Over time, this causes a severe imbalance in the yin and yang energies in the area, causing the women to gain domination. One day, Byun, a young man selling rice cakes, is lured in by an old woman, but she is left unsatisfied. Women in the neighborhood make fun of his inabilities once his reputation spreads. On the other hand, Kang-mok, his elder brother, gets their attention to the extent that they even lurk around while he has a bath. Sad and disappointed, Byun makes a huge mess in the local restaurant one night. As the woman who owned the restaurant was about to hit him, Kang-mok stops her and apologizes for his drunk brother's behavior. When Byun continues to throw a tantrum, he gets hit by Kang-mok and then is carried home. On their way, they come across a beautiful young woman who stuns them with her dancing abilities. At home later, Kang-mok thinks back to when Byun's troubles had started when he caught fire in the most unfortunate place and Kang-mok had aggressively put it out. The next morning, Byun overhears a bunch of men talking about the pretty new girl, Darling, who had recently begun living in a hut in the forest. They say that she got there after she escaped from being the slave of a Japanese man. Judging by the praise of her beauty, Byun realizes that this must be the girl he saw the earlier night. Later that evening, distracted by the voices in the forest, the village's elderly monk and his student walk into a trap in the forest. When Darling wakes up the next morning, she notices a box of delicious rice cakes outside her hut, which she eagerly eats. A while later, she sees Byun leaving her another box of rice cakes and smiles to herself. During her swim after some time, she gets spied on by the village's men. The women of the village see them looking at Darling while she dresses. Angry at how Darling had managed to distract all the men, the women take it all out on her and bully her. Hearing the commotion from a distance, Kang-mok goes over and saves Darling. That night, he informs Byun that they had 5 days to prepare for a wedding. When Byun asked whether he was hiding a girl somewhere, Kang-mok reveals that he brought Darling home. He requests Byun to treat her well, as she will soon be family. At this, Byun angrily walks away without saying anything. Sitting by himself in the forest, he hears the voice of the elderly monk calling out for help and goes over. Free from their trap, the monk and his student spend some time with Byun discussing his problem. In return for saving his life, the monk directs Byun to the totem pole in the village shrine, where he had buried the bottle of wine. He promises that once Byun drinks from that bottle, all his problems will be solved. While Byun heard the monk warning him to drink just 1 sip of the wine, he did not wait long enough to hear him say that if he was to drink more, then it could cause a lot of issues in the village. Tormented by countless people having laughed at him all this time, Byun couldn't stop himself after 1 sip and proceeded to empty the bottle. When Byun finally wakes up, a palace guard informs him that a war has broken out, because of which 1 man from every household was drafted into the royal army. He also says that since Byun was nowhere to be found, his brother went away in his place. Getting home, Byun finds Darling on her own, but realizes that he was responding to her differently than before. Remembering to not be too eager, Byun somehow manages to distract himself with numerous random activities. But when he puts out a wildfire in the forest with his newfound skill, all the women in the village flock to his house intending to confirm what they heard. Just like that, all the horrible things everyone said about him that had destroyed his reputation and questioned his worth, everything was forgotten. Due to the absence of men in the village, every woman competes for Byun's attention by trying various methods to lure him into giving in. When he continues to stay away and everyone's efforts go to waste, the woman whose restaurant Byun had ruined comes up with a plan. She tells the rest of the ladies that they needed to create the right environment to win Byun over. She declares that she will be the first one amongst them to win, as she intended to put her plan into action that night. As promised, she gets to Byun's place with what she says is a special wine, which he eagerly finishes. While he tries telling her that she might not be able to handle what will happen next, she continues insisting that she can. The tables turn in such a way that where the ladies were left unsatisfied in the past, it is Byun now who remains unsatisfied. After hearing of the restaurant owner's success, the women all line up outside Byun's house, eagerly awaiting their turn, and Byun ensures everyone's satisfaction. He wakes up the next morning to see that everyone has left him several precious gifts. Seeing him proud and happy, Darling angrily closes the door of her room. When tales of Byun being massive reach the palace, the Minister of Foreign Affairs decides to summon this person who seems to have the power to please every woman in the village. Meanwhile, the women continue to woo Byun, which just irritates him. When the old woman says she loves him, he angrily says that all this wasn't love and goes home in a rush. He sees Darling on her own at home, but before they could talk, guards from the palace storm in, and Byun is taken away. While every woman in the village wonders what they will do without Byun around, Darling is the one left alone all over again. The Minister of Foreign Affairs meets Byun and tells him about how he could help in solving a problem. He offers him a deal that if Byun could win a competition against the foreigners, then his brother would be free to go home. On the day of the competition, Byun is initially scared when he sees his opponent. However, he gains a bit of confidence when his opponent can carry only 3 weights. When it was time for Byun to perform, he was able to successfully carry 11 weights. But sadly, the celebratory feast later that evening is interrupted by the news of Kang Mok passing away on the battlefield. Over the next few days, Darling suffers the consequences of a severe fever while Byun remains locked in his home, much to the disappointment of the ladies of the village. When Darling's fever gets worse, Byun takes her to the doctor, who says that she needs someone with a strong energy to cool her down. Not wanting to disrespect his brother, Byun does not agree with the cure that the doctor implied, but seeing Darling suffering that night, he proceeds with a life-saving unboxing session. Both enjoy the time of their life. The next morning, Darling is all cured, and she even addresses Byun as her husband. But the memories of his loving brother and the disappointment of having let him down continue to haunt Byun. As the harsh drought of the village continues, the ladies one day discuss how they all miss Byun. Just then, a procession of the royal guards arrives, bringing back the survivors of the war. Overly happy about getting home to his wife, one of the men loses his life due to his eagerness. As the drought persists, the palace seeks the advice of the village monk regarding what should be done to make things right. The monk says that the gods require a sacrifice of a man with tremendous energy. He gets everyone to look for the wine with the wooden nose, but when they finally find the jar a few days later, they realize that it was empty. While the men discuss who could have finished the wine, multiple women realize that they were pregnant. Since there wasn't anyone in the village except Byun, everyone comes to know what had been going on during the war. The monk realizes that Byun disregarded his warning of having just a sip and proclaims that he was responsible for the disaster that the village is facing. This causes everyone to demand that Byun be sacrificed to the gods for causing the drought. The old woman rushes to warn Byun about this and quite shockingly sees Kang Mok slowly making his way home. She reaches Byun's house in a hurry and tells him about the villagers looking for him, but before she could tell him anything more, Darling faints. Carrying her on the way to the doctor, Byun sees Kang Mok calling out to him. Hiding out of shame, he realizes that his brother had lost a leg, which causes Byun even more grief. After getting Darling to the doctor, Byun is told that she was pregnant. The doctor also says that if the drought didn't end soon, Darling's fever could even lead to the end of her and her baby's life. Devastated by everything, Byun willingly gets into the cage the villagers had brought along to catch him. If sacrificing himself would end the drought and save Darling, he had decided to do the right thing. Meanwhile, looking for Byun, Kang Mok finally arrives where the ladies have gathered and are taking care of Darling. He asks where Byun had gone, leaving his wife in so much pain. Everyone is shocked at hearing that, and Kang Mok tells them that he had told Byun to marry her before he left for the war. While he is glad to hear that Darling was pregnant, the ladies are shocked. Elsewhere, Byun walks into a cave for his sacrifice and is shocked to be facing a bear. While everyone waits outside for confirmation of Byun's sacrifice, the ladies console Kang Mok and remind him that he had to take care of Darling and her child now. Just then, they see Darling walking towards the cave. Feeling bad for her, the old woman stops the guards from escorting Darling away and urges everyone to sincerely pray to the gods one last time. The restaurant owner leads the prayer, and the women join her, and eventually Darling joins them too. Hearing their prayer for rain, lightning strikes and the skies open while Bayun executes his part of the sacrifice in the cave. The villagers rejoice at the end of the difficult drought, and they mourn Bayun's loss the next morning. A few years later, the women are seen calling out to their sons. The young ones had inherited their father's skills. Elsewhere, a few women are seen on a boat discussing the legend of Byun without realizing that he was their boatman, which implies that he survived the bear but didn't go back home. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more exciting videos. Cheers!